I think as Zorava mentioned, we have been doing part of the incubator program. These two guys here are part of the initial incubator program that we have. And interestingly, how have we been supporting them? First and foremost, capital raising and visibility. I think it was mentioned how the REITs have been presenting in the market. And what we also did as part of those sessions, we actually collected very good market feedback from investors, pension funds, and all those guys on what types of REITs they want to see first come to market. And also secondly, what is their interest in these REITs that we have. So I guess with that, okay, in the interest of time, I'll also enumerate what all the other factors are, but just in closing, as NSE, yeah. But anyway, as they're sorting out the tech issues, maybe what we can do is, I'm very excited to also have on this panel here right before us, two of the, it was mentioned that there are 5 upcoming REITs coming to market. The interesting thing, and which has been a common theme all across, is that of the 5, it's actually a good mix. It's a balanced diet. We have D-REIT, I-REIT, public sector, private sector. Actually, in the slide they had NHC, but don't worry, we are not at negotiation stage yet. But he was proposed to be part of the panel, and we're also considering how we can help them raise some of the money to actually do affordable housing. So without further ado, we'll get straight to it. We want to learn more about how these guys have been going through the journey. And then I'll ask my panelists to introduce themselves. Maybe we can start with Zorava. First of all, happy Diwali. Maybe we should have it Monday since we're here now. But anyway, just briefly introduce yourself. iJenga, what type of property are you into?
Yeah, thanks. So, wearing my REIT hat, my name is Singh. I'm the MD of iJenga Housing. We're an affordable housing rental REIT. So, rental housing, simply put. Basically, it's an income REIT. And although we are also creating a D-REIT for a pass-through mechanism, I mean, there's a lot of just tax efficiency that comes with the D-REIT. But for us, the main thing is about a portfolio of real estate, rental real estate, and that. So we're creating a rental housing REIT.
Excellent. So next, we can go to Vida. Introduce yourself. Or what is Vida up to?
Hello, my name is Otieno. I head projects at Vida. I believe everyone knows Vida now, owned by Actis and SPRE. Actis is a private equity firm based in London that acquires assets, adds value, and exits. SPRE, second largest real estate firm in India, Tata. So they came together to develop mid-market and affordable housing in India, and that was so successful. And they are replicating that model now in Africa, and that is being developed through Vida.
Yeah. Bryan, now you have your slides. After the introduction, we could go through them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Will it be too much going through them? Just one slide for the benefit of guys.
Okay, so you have agreed, but some little minutes, don't rush. We'll tell you when to stop. Just go on.
Okay, fine. So, I told you they leave the best for last. So this is the dessert phase. So we will take our time. Anyway, this is the current participants. We have 8 actually, but I haven't put all of them here, just based on some of their unique nature. But as you can see, as I mentioned earlier, we are seeing a mix of, we've had iJenga saying they're doing a mix of I-REIT, D-REIT. We're also seeing other guys doing D-REIT, I-REIT in different combination, public sector, private sector, promoters. But a common theme is residential housing. So I guess this is broad-based. We have everyone from everywhere, and we're all supporting them. Critically, as we were told, we'll be doing the deal rooms. But what I wanted to highlight is some of the rich data that we actually collected from some of these. So as you can see, the guys who are actually attending the deal room are institutional investors in the market, in the local context. And we did a series of surveys with them. First of all, what type of REITs are they interested in? Income REIT, D-REIT. From what we found is that they are normally, agnostic, so to say. But they, as you can see in the top right one, they tend to prefer certain segments. Office space is good, residential is good, but maybe most importantly, and which is feedback that we outlay to our incubator program, what are the factors that investors are asking for as they're considering investing into these REITs? So as you can see, return on investment then came first and foremost, which I think was a theme that was repeated even in the fund manager meeting that we had yesterday. But the deal room also was not just a vehicle for data collection. We also asked the investors after the pitches were done, what REITs do you want to hear more from? And we organized the one-to-one engagements. Finally, about NSC's association into this, I have to highlight this. Usually, if you think, where does an exchange typically come in a transaction process? Usually it's at the end, when you're fundraising, or you're now going to list. And one of the things that we did now on the investor side, we actually got into a partnership with, this is a UK government program called Mobilist. And what they do is that they invest in any capital markets transaction. So if you are out there looking to do any capital markets transactions, I heard earlier today that listing was a challenge. Please, we now have someone that can fund that sort of thing. So we're happy to engage. And what do? They provide investment capital and also technical assistance. So actually on the day of this, I remember we organized for some of our REITs in the pipeline to engage directly with some of these investors who can help support them as they are coming to market. So that's some of the key activities that we've been doing. If you're sat there and you're looking to do a REIT by yourself, this is some of the support that we can also offer you. So without further ado, I know two of the panelists had introduced themselves, so I'll let the regulator go last, which I guess is in good order.
Yeah, and thank you. He has already mentioned it. I'm the regulator. Yeah. Anyway, my name is Justus Agoti. I head market deepening at Capital Markets Authority. Happy that Mr. Wayaki, who is covered everything that I needed to cover. Clap for him now. And I'm happy to announce that we are going to punch him. Yeah.
Okay, excellent. So maybe what we can do, I'll just spend very few minutes. Let's also, I'm imagining for some of us, we're also getting to learn of some of these companies that are coming to market. But before they come and raise money from you, I want to ask you some few minutes to get to understand them. And maybe we can start with iJenga. Just maybe provide a bit of color. What type of REIT are you looking to do? Just emphasize on that again. The size. Maybe speak a bit about what are some of the indicative return rates that you're looking at.
Yeah, great, thanks. Yeah, ours is mostly focused on Nairobi real estate, Nairobi rental housing. And so when you look at a city like Nairobi, and let's speak specifically of Nairobi, we're about 80% rental in the city. And that rental housing comes in all forms of quality. And I think we're all familiar with everything from informal settlements to high-end sort of general Nthiga style or Nthiga style housing. Now, when you look at the affordable housing segment where we are focused, we're on affordable or low-income housing and lower middle. This is where the volume of residents live. For us, we're focused on about 70% of the Nairobi residents, and that is within the low-income and the lower middle-income segments. So for us, we've got some pretty key neighborhoods that we're focused on because, when you're doing the math behind the REIT, and I was happy that Professor Morris talked a lot about some of the REIT metrics that are there, and when you have to look at a portfolio of real estate, how you have to really be focused on getting the return figures. Where you find the land, and how much you can buy the land for, and what density you can put on the land, and what people are paying in rents, is what helps you understand which neighborhood you can really focus on and the type of product you're really focusing on. And so for us, we have a particular interest in areas like Agoti, we like Nthiga, we like Kino, Mountain View. We see that there is a lot of land available all the way up to Ruaka. If you look on that side of the city, you've got a lot of land available. And so we're predominantly focused on those neighborhoods right now. And in terms of like the scale of what we're doing, is our first phase target, this portfolio that we're focused on in Nairobi, is about 40,000 units. So that would be anywhere between 200 and 300 buildings. That is about 100 billion of assets under management, which is about $1 billion. And so for us, that is our main focus. And what we do, although our background is we're in real estate development, we're actually initially not starting out as developers on this portfolio. So we are buying buildings from developers. So a developer comes and says, hey, look, we're doing this project, and we'll put an offer and buy a building from them and put it into the portfolio. And so for us, it's really about a scale. It's a large portfolio, and we're just focused on that sort of affordable housing segment. Our target yields, which, kind of we're stuck a bit between a rock and a hard place, right? So your treasuries are at, what, 16 right now, and to get a 16% return is not that easy. So you kind of have to, kind of have a competitive return, but also a defensible return, right? A defensible return is like, well, what can you go and defend in the market? And for us, we think like a 12 starting yield is a strong number. It's not 16, which is technically considered risk-free, but at least with a 12, you can grow from there. That's a starting yield. It's an asset-backed security. It's inflation protected, it's liquid, it's tax efficient. So we think a 12 is a good starting number. Now, when we go talk to, when you look at the market and you look at the math, well, you say, well, how do you do a 12 when the risk-free rate is 16? But your comp set is not always just the risk-free rate. The comp set here in this case is what institutional holders of real estate get on their assets. And we have found that, pension funds right now or in other institutional holders are maybe only getting 4, 6, 8%. So, at least when we compare ourselves on a like-to-like basis for that asset class, we would have a stronger return profile. And so this is kind of like how we've come up with it. I guess we'll probably get into like how the journey has been so far, so maybe I'll just stop there. Thanks.
Yeah, so thanks for that. So same question, maybe whatever we're trying to do, size, yield.
So we are doing a REIT. We are building units to sell. We are not building to hold. So it's clear from the get-go, and we are emphasizing on the REIT because of the high yields that we get, over 30%. At times, if you combine it with an REIT, at times your IRR gets dragged. So the ticket size we are looking at the moment is around 4 billion. But then this 4 billion, we want to use it to accelerate capital up to 20 billion Kenya shillings. So what do I mean? The way our business model is structured is such that we will inject some equity. Then with the small equity we have, or rather with the small equity that we inject, we will accelerate a lot of customer deposits that we'll use to build the units. We will not take any debt, and I heard yesterday my good friend from Econ who was saying that he would like to, rather they leverage a lot on debt when it comes to the REIT. For us, we don't want to touch any debt. So we can get to the point where we do a term sheet, but we don't want to draw. So we're looking at 4 billion to develop units at a cost of 20 billion shillings. And most of this money will be coming from the customer deposit. So the amount that you inject from the beginning is very minimal, and that allows you to get a very high IRR. So we are looking at 30% and above, and this would beat your bonds and also plus the inflation, and that's what makes it quite exciting. Yeah.
Yeah, and listen, our East African brothers, imagine adding some of these rates we're hearing here in Kenya shilling terms. Must be how the Moroccans feel on a daily. But you said 30%, so but if I can clarify, so if I look at your business model, so essentially say you have this much property, a large chunk of it is customer deposits. Essentially it's a low cost liability, and then now the other portion is what you are bringing to market for investors. So maybe you can expand a bit, because if I then look at it that way, how then do you validate projects before you start, so that you ensure that you get these customer deposits?
Okay. And let me start by a lesson we learned. When we did our first project at Vida, the project was 2 billion Kenya shillings. We used equity, 2B, to put into that project and build. No debt, no customer deposit. That is the most inefficient way of using capital. For the same 2 billion, I'd use 200 million to do 10 similar projects. By injecting the 200 million in one project and using that at the pre-construction phase of the project, where you're conceptualizing the project, you're master planning, you're paying all your legal fees, then you accelerate collections and possibly don't take any debt. So for us to ensure that these velocities are good, we have to market validate the product. We do our desktop study. There's a lot of market feasibility that we do. But then most of the times, this is just academic. You have to go to the ground and monitor the market response to your product. And we always say in our governance, we have to sell at least 30% of the units with agreements for sale before we ground break. And at times, the market, rather not at times, always, the market will never lie to you. If you go to the market with studios and people want 2 beds, the market will not take those studios. So then there's a way we design our product such that we can have an agile approach to retrofit the design to what the market is required, rather what the market needs. So any product that we ground break on has been market validated, and we start collecting deposits way before we start construction. So by the time I'm groundbreaking, I have collected, call it 200 million Kenya shillings. That would give me almost 8 months construction runway without using any additional equity. So my equity was only expended at pre-construction to pay my consultants, to pay my legal fees, but then I'm getting free equity from buyers to build the project. So then after that, because our rate is we're starting to redeem after 3 years. So we give ourselves 2 years to build. Then rule of thumb is by the time you're finishing the project, you have collected almost 60%, which is essentially 60 to 70%, which is essentially what you need to take care of your hard cost. Then you add an additional year to have all buyers honor their payment obligations to you. Then after that, now you can start distributions, and people who have invested can make their redemptions thereafter.
Okay, excellent. As you can see, even the upcoming REITs are coming up with some very innovative structures that I think we can all learn from. So finally, to Zorava now, just speak a bit about it, because I know there are a lot of developers in this room. There are also some pension assets, that are stuck. Maybe what's your investment process, and on top of that, how has your journey been so far as you close?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I think I'll maybe talk about the journey, and I'll talk maybe more at kind of a program level, and then at sort of like a REIT level. The program level, I remember when we started this toolkit incubator program, I want to say 2 years ago, it sort of started in kind of a conceptual phase. This is pre-Amara REIT. Acorn had been active a bit, but the idea REITs was still sort of not really kind of that well understood yet, and people didn't really understand the value of it. And then slowly we started sort of holding the events, and more and more people were evangelizing, and we started to see momentum pick up. Well, that momentum has picked up now in the industry, because people realize that there's a lot of business to be had, right? Whether it be on property valuations, every year you have to market your assets, whether it be on the legal side of things, every asset you buy, you need a legal service provider, whether it be on investment banking, because you're constantly raising capital. There's an entire industry here, and it's a great structured product to really bring to market. Coming back to that thing I mentioned in the introduction there around the investors, somehow the investors haven't been sort of grabbing on as quickly as we maybe would have thought. Whether it be the high treasury rate, that sort of makes us less attractive. Whether it be the complicated nature of the word REIT versus just saying portfolio of real estate, right? And somehow we are not seeing an overwhelming amount of enthusiasm like we maybe initially thought of it when we first got to the outset. We're seeing a slow conversion, and I think what would really help is more pensions converting their assets into REIT. I think there's a bit of a follow-on process. We saw that being led with Amara. So it seems like that part of the process is a bit sort of like slower going, but it seems like it's picking up momentum now. For us, as our REIT and the work that we've been doing, part of it has been focused on our regulatory applications. So that process takes time, especially when we restructured our business, we set it up as a new entity. So now we had to adopt sort of a number of policies that enable us to be capital markets compliant. And we've actually still been working through many of those things and building boards and a separate asset management board, etc. So, you know, it's sort of like if you're not prepared to be, if you're not a fund manager or prepared to be capital markets compliant, it takes a bit of work to do that. And then I think it's sort of like also the nature of the assets, then the nature of sort of the fundraising, all of these pieces have taken time, and I think surprisingly a lot more time than we had expected. So I think that part of what we're trying to do through the program is demystify all these things, standardize these things, provide tools for these things, build education and whatnot, so it doesn't take as long for people. But I think that, you know, just given the number of moving parts, I think that's been sort of like part of the work that has gone into it. So I think yeah, those have been the journeys. I don't think there's any sort of like big bottleneck. The only big bottleneck really is the return or cost of capital vis-a-vis what the risk-free rate is providing right now. I think that one, as you look at long-term institutional capital in real estate, that is your major issue because it's very hard to beat that benchmark sort of risk-free rate. But otherwise, it's not really any other comments. I'll say to the regulator, they're very helpful, very amenable.
Yeah,
Working for them.
final one word answer as the regulator gives us closing remarks. When can we expect GREs to come to market? One word, and regulator.
We already got, thanks Mr. Regulator, you already got our REIT manager's license. So we are tying up our paperwork. By the end of this month, we'll be submitting to now have the license for the REIT. So we hopefully will get the license Q1 and launch it Q2 next year. But we have already started the project. The underlying asset is, of course, houses. So we have already advanced the construction of the project so that when we raise the money, that money has got a place to be consumed. You can imagine if I raise 4 billion today and I've got no work for it. So we've already started converting those PowerPoints and Excel sheets to actual buildings. So the projects are ongoing. So Q2 next year, we start a roadshow, we get the money in and accelerate the projects. Thank you.
So for us, we'll be probably about a quarter behind that. And so we've got our assets, we're mobilizing our own capital first to put into projects and working through our regulatory applications. So for us, we're more about Q2, Q3 of next year, then about a quarter behind that.
Yeah, I'm happy they're not mentioning stamp duty. Yeah, first of all, just to mention that there are a few aspects we need to look at here. We have been talking about quality assets. I think that is so fundamental for the success of REITs. And then, of course, there's professional management, we know. And then protection of those who are going to be stakeholders. I think the regulator is there to ensure all that happens. Yeah, Mr. Wayaki had mentioned that there are a few aspects that need to be looked at. For example, if a local REIT wants to go out of Kenya to Rwanda, for example, I think we can have discussions. As CMA, we are always open to having conversations on what is possible. Even having what we're calling an agricultural REIT. Of course, there may not be a law to support the same, but that does not mean that it cannot happen if we want it to happen. So mine is to assure you as a regulator that just have your thoughts put together and ensure that the documentation is right, then consult with the regulator so then we can work with you in the journey, ultimately to ensure that we have you listed on the market. The other thing I want to mention is on stamp duty. Of course, there has been a lot of consultation. I realized Peter was bashing the government quite a bit. I have some 2 invites to the State House this afternoon. Wayaki, you can join me. We're just kidding. So I just want to mention that, yes, as government, and CMA is part of government, by the way, there are a few areas that require a bit of bridging, addressing, we admit. And, working with the market is so very important to ensure that all this happens. Granted, all sorts of challenges, including within the real estate. It takes a lot of time to even get registrations done, confirm a few things here and there. But looking forward, I think we need to have hope and realize that this is our market. We can either grow it or fall with it. I'll just give you an example of Econ. Econ has been seeking capital from the local market. Now they have been, noted by other international investors who have come in a big way to ensure that the assets grow. We can do similar to other budding institutions within the market if there is a lot of collaboration with the regulator. Just also indicate that we are there for you. The regulator is not the regulator of the 1990s. There's a lot of accommodation there is, and in fact, the CEOs here can attest that. Frank?
Absolutely.